Well, a very good morning to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us here in Washington. To those of us, many of us online as well, good morning, good evening, good afternoon from wherever you are tuning in from. My name is Brian Finlay. I'm the president and CEO here at the Stimson Center, and it gives me a great pleasure not just to welcome you all here today, but to tell you this. In this room, we conduct literally hundreds of events over the course of a year, and I cannot have favorites. But if I were to have a favorite, it would be our Voices from Japan series. And it is for a number of reasons that the Voices event has a special place in my heart and in the heart of all of us here at the Stimson Center. Our Japan program here at Stimson was launched back in 1999. It's one of the longest running programs that we have at the organization. It's attributable, that longevity is attributable to two factors. One, the incomparable Yuki Tatsumi, whom you are going to be hearing from in just a few minutes. She is a remarkable scholar and a great gift of Japan to the United States. Yuki has been running our program since the very beginning. She was the mastermind behind that program. She is remarkably skilled. She is insightful. She is well connected in this town as she is back in Tokyo, and really is a remarkable broker between our two countries in bringing a common understanding and shared insights. So Yuki, big congratulations to you. I think on either the 10th or the 11th, maybe even year of this series. And thank you again for all of your and your team's work. The second, I think, point that I need to bring up, particularly to this group, is a reminder that Stimson's commitment to the Japan program also reflects, I think, a very special relationship between the United States and Japan. I can really think of no other country, certainly in the case of Stimson, that we are closer to and have shared understandings, shared values, shared interests. We benefit greatly from their support, the support of the government of Japan, from corporations across Japan, and they are plugged into so many of our programmatic efforts. So we have a deep and long-standing relationship with the Japanese people and with the government in Japan. But more importantly, our country has a great and remarkable tie to the Japanese people that we are all greatly for. We're also grateful to Tokyo for loaning us General Yamazaki, who is here from Tokyo. He served, of course, as the 6th Chief of Staff at the SDF. My colleagues will be giving a much longer bio of him, but I do want to extend a very warm welcome.
General, welcome to Washington, and welcome to Washington. With that, my last order of business is the most important. I want to hand this to my colleague. She is a student fellow and director of Japan Modernization. General, I give you.
So his voice is not coming in.
Thank you, Brian, for a very kind introduction. Good morning. As you introduced me, my name is Yuki Tatsumi, and I'm the director of the Japan program here at Stimson. Thank you for joining us this morning, this evening, wherever you may be on this globe, and certainly for all of you here. Thank you for coming out this early morning. I made a conscious decision to hold this event at this particular December 2nd. As many of you know, this is the. I was told there's a. So as many of us know, this day is the Pearl Harbor Day, the day that many in the all of us in the United States remember as the day that lives in me. But I decided to hold this this event at this particular day because the transformation of the bilateral relationship between the U.S. and Japan since then, from the foes that fought one of the bloodiest wars to the one of the most U.S. alliance relationship in the world. is worth discussing, especially today. With conflicts ongoing in Europe and the Middle East, I believe that this particular bilateral relationship between our two countries is an example that the countries could emerge from the deadliest wars as close allies and partners. Before I begin the program, let me thank friends of Japan program who are proudly presented on this panel, whose generous support has made this program possible since its first seminar back in 2013. Since 2013, when it was first launched, we are privileged to host Tokyo's top strategic leaders at that time. This year is no exception. I am deeply honored to welcome General Koji Yamazaki, the sixth Chief of Staff of Japan's South Defense Force, who retired on March 30th this year after 40 years of distinguished service with JSDF. Prior to assuming his position as the Chief of Staff of JSDF, General Yamazaki served as he is a graduate of the National Defense Academy and received master's from National Defense University in the United States. Before I introduce our moderator, one of the housekeeping announcements, well, a couple of them actually. For those of you who has a headset for interpretation, English channel is number 1, Japanese channel is number 10. And after the event, please do return all the equipment. They are very expensive. I do not want to have to pay for the penalty. And also during the question and answer session, if you have the website for, if you can log on to our event channel, there is a website, stimson.org/questions. You are very much encouraged to put their question there to make it a little bit easier for Kelly to manage those incoming questions. Last but not least, last housekeeping announcement. After COVID, many of you have heard about the labor shortage. It is actually real, including the interpreters market. Prior to this event, we must have contacted close to 15, even 20 interpreters to work with us for this morning, and no one is available. First time ever that this happened. However, as the luck has it, I am also an interpreter by the training. So I volunteered to get my old job back this morning. So that is why my good colleague, Dr. Kelly Greco, has kindly agreed to step in as a moderator for this session. Kelly is with Stimson's Grand Strategy Program, and her work focuses on U.S. grand strategy and defense policy. She also teaches at Georgetown University and serves also as a non-resident fellow at the Brute Krulak Center of Marine Corps University. She holds a PhD from Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Kelly will open the session by asking General Yamazaki a few questions. Following that, she will open it up to the audience Q&A. We are in the group of nations that lead the international community based on the universal values such as democracy, freedom, human rights, rule of law. We support each other, we prosper each other. However, I believe that this international order has been facing a major challenge, and now we're seeing a complex structure of cooperation and competition.
And I really now feel that Japan has to do its play its own role to be able to protect and respect and uphold this international liberal order. And Kelly, you're of course the expert, so you don't need to hear this from me. But we are in a strategically very unique environment where we were surrounded by China, Russia, and North Korea, all of which are grave security threat to Japan. And let me take up one by one. Chinese current developments, including the buildup of a military posture and aggressive external behavior. It is truly the gravest challenge for the international order. North Korea, of course, as many of you know, have been improving rapidly its nuclear development capacity, ballistic missile capability, and its related technology and operational capacity. Finally, Russia, as the permanent five of the UN Security Council, actually itself the international law and UN Charter. And what it did to Ukraine is something that we never should allow that happen. But in more recent month, it's a growing concern that Russia and China seem to be coordinating its efforts and almost placing the joint challenge in the international community. Prime Minister Kishida last year used the phrase, "Today's Ukraine can be tomorrow's East Asia." This is a very simple phrase that captures his sense of urgency. And this really reflects his personal concerns that worries about the future stability of the Indo-Pacific region. And he articulated his concerns and articulated the need for Japan's effort to further strengthen its defense capacity. Because of that, Prime Minister decided to almost double its defense spending over the next 5 years. I've been involved in this effort for decades. This is really not an easy task to accomplish. Because during right after the Cold War, Japan's defense budget has been decreased and flattened out. As we sat and watched the security environment around Japan to worsen, because of the kind of a unspoken consensus that the defense spending needs to be contained to 1% of its GDP. But overcoming those notional constraints and to decide to be able to invest in space, cyber, electronic magnetics, and those new domains, I was very pleased to see the Prime Minister's personal commitment to enhance the defense capability, including our ability to be able to respond in this new domain. Secondly, let me talk about Japan's decision to enhance its standoff counterattack capability, which is one of the 7 areas where we would like to focus on. This is truly the effort for us to deter and defend incoming threats, such as GPI and enhancing the counterattack. I just mentioned about the threats from the ballistic missile ballistic missile. Moving forward, Japan's historically has been primarily focused on defending and intercepting the incoming missile. However, as our security environment deteriorates, we really need to be able to attack enemies' bases if necessary, as a minimal as one of the minimal measure to defend ourselves from those external threats. This is a big reorientation of our defense policy. Legally, it always has been understood that Japan is allowed to possess such capability. But under this new strategic documents, the fact that the government made a political decision to actualize that is a big transformation. And next, let me talk a little bit about the jointness amongst the three services. There's one of the hallmark about the national security strategy and defense strategy is to stand up the joint force headquarters. This is again another long-standing issue, and we have heard that we have discussed a lot about how necessary it would be that our three services can seamlessly operate across the multiple domains. And the enhancement of joint staff was critical because as a role, my current role or my previous role as a chief of staff of a JSDF, I had two responsibilities: as a top military advisor of defense minister, and also as the top commander of the entire self-defense forces and its operations. But in the past, and also currently, air, naval, and a ground self-defense force has its own quarters, own operational headquarters. And as necessary, one of the services let the joint task force stand up. However, in this current environment, where it is peacetime and emergency can shift quite seamlessly, we finally are able to achieve the decision to stand up the joint force headquarters that all the service components headquarters will report to. And this will not only allow us better operations amongst our own three services, but then also it'll do a lot to advance the interoperability of the between Japan and the United States. Sorry, I went on a little long, but those are the top three that I have in mind.
So you very nicely captured for us the transformations that have been happening for Japanese national security and defense. But of course, the last few years have also been a period of change for the alliance as well. We've seen, a further deepening. And so I'm wondering if you might share, your impressions and experience about the deepening of the alliance in your position as Chief of Staff of Japan's Self-Defense Force.
Right.
The U.S. Japan alliance, not just for the defense of Japan, but for the Indo-Pacific and for the world. It's an alliance for all of those things. It's the cornerstone of peace and security and prosperity for all of these. It's a global alliance. And as Chief of Staff of the Joint Staff, I always thought about strengthening and deepening our alliance and improving our interoperability. That was always one of the pillars of my work. I worked for three prime ministers: Prime Minister Abe, Prime Minister Suga, and current Prime Minister Kishida. On January 19th, 2020, in Tokyo, there was the 60th anniversary celebration of the U.S. Japan Security Treaty hosted by Prime Minister Abe, a grand celebration. As you know, 60 years previous, January 19, 1960, on the exact same day, former Prime Minister Kishi and former President Eisenhower signed the treaty in Washington. So 60 years later, the Japanese government invited President Eisenhower's granddaughter, Ms. Mary Jean Eisenhower, and Prime Minister Abe was Prime Minister Kishi's grandson. And he made a speech saying, the Japan-US Security Treaty is now more than ever an indestructible pillar, an immovable pillar that protects peace and ensures prosperity in Asia and the Indo-Pacific and the world. And he thanked everyone that had worked to strengthen the alliance. He also expressed his determination to make the light and hope of our alliance shine even brighter as an alliance of hope. I was next to the Prime Minister and could hear his strong determination in his words. And 3 years later, in January of 2023, there was a 2+2, and there was also a Kishida-Biden summit. Last year, our two countries formulated national security strategies. The visions, priorities, and goals of our strategies are more aligned than ever before. I was at Japan's 2+2 with the US, but listening to the US remarks, I thought to myself, that could be Japan speaking. And the chairman, Milley, was there as well. I worked with him for 6 years. And we were saying that we've never had a time like this before. And the meeting went so far as to present a vision of a modernized alliance postured to prevail in a new era of strategic competition by bolstering deterrence in an integrated manner. As representatives of the Self-Defense Force, let me tell you about the Self-Defense Forces. There's now they're now chief of staff level meetings, commanders meetings, ground, maritime, and air, and unit-to-unit meetings in the Indo-Pacific. I can tell you that at all of these levels, there is close coordination. Staff talks, joint strategy formulation, and tabletop exercises and live exercises, ISR. And after our peace and security legislation, even if there's not an armed attack, we have been able to protect U.S. weapons, and that's happened more and more. And flexibly, we are able to engage in deterrence, and this is happening often. Let me tell you about the U.S. forces Japan. There are 55,000 troops, roughly. The Navy, Air Force, Marines, Army. And each of them have good coordination with the self-defense forces. This is also a strength. Let me give you an example. With Chairman Milley, chairman of the former joint chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Milley, when I was chief of staff of the ground self-defense, he was chief of staff of the U.S. Army. And when I was chief of the Joint Staff, he was chairman of the Joint Chiefs. And the first thing to happen was when we first met, when we were both serving in the ground and army, he said, let's go to Iwo Jima. And we did it. We did that. Earlier, Ms. Tatsumi said that today is December 7th, Pearl Harbor Day. So let me tell you what Chairman Milley, Alexander Milley, his father, he was in the 4th Marine Division and landed on Iwo Jima. The two of us went to that spot and we walked along that path. And Lieutenant Colonel Ide, who is here today, was with us. And he said, my uncle was a company commander of snipers that were firing down on the landing troops. As you know, the Battle of Iwo Jima was extremely tough, bitter, fierce. And we went to the spot where Chairman Milley's father had landed and went to the landing path to Mount Suribachi. This tough battle and the others of the Second World War, our two countries have been able to overcome and create an alliance that has global status like none other in the world. And the two of us vowed to create strong ties while studying history and to protect the peace and security of the world, of the region. I was so pleased that Chairman Milley was always by my side, and Admiral Aquilino was a very trusted counterpart of mine. Over just last year, I met 40 times, either in person or by video conference. 40 times in a year, that basically means we saw each other every week. The two of us used to joke that we're so close that we could share secrets that we couldn't even share with our wives, that we were friends that shared secrets. So this was a joke, but really it was the truth. So the fact that the counterparts are bound together by ties of trust, I think that is the foundation of the deepening of our alliance. If you want to create bilateral alliance, it depends on personal relationships. And so how do you forge those personal ties? I think in any era, that's a universal. And that is what we can be most proud of to the world, I think, those personal relationships that undergird our alliance.
So as you know, the theme today is the modernization of the U.S. Japan alliance. And there's now a broad strategic vision laid out in Japan's 3 national security documents, as well as the recent 2+2 statement. But what needs to be done to implement that vision? What should be the priority of the alliance right now, moving forward?
Yes. Thank you. So just started by saying that, as I mentioned before, U.S. and Japan's strategic security strategy are very much well aligned. It is very clear, if you read the U.S. national security strategy, I really walk away with the feeling that it could be ours as well. And when we talk about modernization of the alliance, is for our two countries to enhance our deterrence capability. So just like you said, Kelly, um, it is about how to implement the strategic vision, and always the key word is a joint and together. And so that we each can have the joint operational capability that we can cooperate deeply with each other, and almost to the point where two sides can be integrated with one another, is really the key for the implementation of our joint strategic vision. So what does Japan need to do? First, as I mentioned, three national security strategic documents are truly epoch-making. But this is just a word on paper. We just basically made an announcement that this is the direction that we're going to go. So this doesn't automatically translate into the enhancing of JSDF capability overnight. So it is really critical for us to implement these visions in translating them into concrete actions. And then I'm sure you all have this experience. You face different challenges in the planning phase and implementation phase, and that is why it is often happen that we just get the acquiesce to the fact that we made this great document and never to implementation. But I don't think this should be the case on this one. As you mentioned, this is really the period of implementation. And of course, there will be some challenges ahead that we are not currently anticipating. But it is so important for us to overcome these challenges and continue to push forward to implement the vision. Secondly, as Japan continues its efforts to fundamentally enhance its defense capability, we need to continue to improve the way that U.S. and Japan collaborate at all levels, at policy level, at the operational level, at unit level. Last year, when two countries revised our joint bilateral defense guidelines, we established a kind of a collaborative body called Alliance Coordination Mechanism. We need to really invest in enhancing the ACM's coordination capability. I also talked about in my response to your earlier question that JSDF will really streamline the chain of command and communication amongst the three services. So how that can all be well connected and coordinated with our U.S. counterpart, that is another key. And third and finally, I believe that the improvement of our joint operational capability and interoperability is really critical. And there are a few. It's a little bit going into details, but if you can bear with me. First, before national defense strategy, there was a national defense program outlines. And in our last national defense program outline, there was the word called multi-domain operation capacity. And that is the concept that includes this new domain that includes cyber, space, electromagnetics, and cognitive warfare as a new domain. We use the word cross-domain operations, but U.S. use multi-domain operations. and coordination between both of our concepts and operations are not exactly as well aligned as it should be. So I think that is the first priority. And secondly, I mentioned in the beginning about the counterattack capability as Japan's major policy reorientation. This is the capability that we hadn't possessed before. In order for us to have this capacity, it is important for us to build a system of intelligence gathering, intelligence sharing, planning of the targeting, execution of the targeting, and assessment of the targeting. So it is important that two militaries continue to coordinate our efforts in those in the every step of the way. And thirdly, we should never overlook the fact that Russia, when it invaded Ukraine, didn't hesitate to use nuclear intimidation. That is something that we should not be allowed. That we should not allow. And for us to deter such a potential nuclear intimidation, of course, nuclear deterrence is important, but also U.S. Japan bilateral extended deterrence consultation needs to be revitalized and deepened. Fourthly, at the unit level, we have been conducting many joint training and joint exercises, but I think we should continue to practice. Practice makes it perfect. Well, maybe not almost perfect, but almost perfect. Because nowadays, more and more, our joint exercise needs to have a connectivity with other countries such as Australia, India, and Republic of Korea. And the scope of activities have geographically broadened, and the types of activities have been also greatly much more diversified. So I think that those effort to adapt to that changing is important. Fifth, I talked about my own sense of urgency that anything can happen when it comes to a country's attempt to unilaterally change the status quo by force, or they may attempt that. So we really need to work on how to deter those such attempt. Flexible deterrence operation, FDO, is critical. Strategic messaging and intelligence gathering and sharing, surveillance, ISR, those need to be further expanded and deepened. And six, how to ensure that the informational security, including cybersecurity, how we do that jointly is also important. Finally, this is actually my long-time dream. I really believe that we should promote joint use of U.S. Japan joint use of our facilities. I just mentioned the U.S. forces in Japan. There are still some people in Japan. As I mentioned, we host a large number of U.S. forces. I really would like to have a situation where U.S. forces in Japan use JSDF facilities more often whenever necessary and appropriate. And I really think by promoting this joint use concept, I think we could also make the alliance really workable and operational.
Well, last question before we open it up to the audience, but Yuki mentioned to start us off, and you've also spoken to the fact that today is Pearl Harbor Day in the United States. And of course, 82 years ago, our two countries were embarking on fighting one of the bloodiest wars in history. And as you also nicely captured for us. Since that time, we've forged one of the closest alliances that exists today. And I'm wondering, what can such a transformation about the relationship between our two countries show the world, do you think?
I talked about the foundation being personal relations. Let me tell you now about what impact there is on the world. Both of our countries are world leaders. Economically, we're the largest and third largest. Diplomacy, military affairs, technology, in various fields, we both have very high levels of capability, and we have good ties in each of those fields. And behind those are common values and interests. Both of our countries have the same values, and both of our capabilities are top level, world class. The self-defense forces and the U.S. military have very close and strong ties, as I said, HADR to high-end military, high-intensity interoperability, I think, is without equal in the world. Using these capabilities for the peace and stability of the world, we can be effective. That itself has a lot of influence on the world. Using that influence, I believe that we can contribute to world peace and stability.
We'll now open it up to questions, and we have some great ones. I'm going to ask this one from William too, because it's similar to the one that I have as well, which is, as you talked about, Japan is creating a permanent joint operational headquarters, which is really groundbreaking. But it raises questions about how exactly that will work with the United States, with the counterpart being someone in Indo-PACOM, or I guess the question might be, given that change, what kind of changes perhaps need to be made on the U.S. side now to create some kind of counterpart to the new headquarters? And what might that look like, in your opinion?
Very good question. Thank you very much. Actually, it has not been determined or finalized, as I should say. We're in the middle of the debate of how to work that out and work it through. When I was the chief of staff, I told you about the dual role that I had as a top military advisor to defense minister and a prime minister from a political, civilian military relations. It is very important for the chief of staff function as a top military advisor, as a professional. But at the same time, I also had the other side of the role. So basically, I was playing two roles in one. So this decision would really separate those two. So purely these joint headquarters that I just talked, permanent joint headquarters, will solely focus on the operational side of this decision making. So as a chief of staff, we will have probably. So as a political advisor, counterpart is the chairman of Joint Chief of Staff. But operationally, Indo-PACOM commander is operational counterpart, so to speak. However, Indo-PACOM commander just is not the operational commands commander. He also does have an aspect of a policy advisor as well. And also Indo-PACOM's area of responsibility is very vast. Of course, they have Northeast Asia, including Japan, Southeast Asia, that includes Philippines, Thailand, and all the way down to Pacific, to Australia and the South Pacific Islands. So Indo-PACOM commander really has the biggest AOR of all the regional commands. In case of Japan, however, we are really, Japan's AOR is really Japanese archipelago and the areas around it. So area of operation is much, much smaller than the that of the Indo-PACOM commander. So if the Indo-PACOM command, Indo-PACOM could be maybe a little bit too bigger, a little bit too big to just solely focus on Japan, then now is the question whether there will be kind of a sub-command within the Indo-PACOM command, Indo-PACOM that focuses on Japan and its vicinity, but I don't think that has been determined and is still being debated, discussed. But the permanent joint headquarters for Japan, how this headquarters commanding generals counterpart should be is really truly we can think of plural positions. So I think that really I guess will be worked out eventually by conducting many joint trainings, exercises, tabletop simulation exercises, and how I think that might be the best way to identify who should talk to whom, question. So, like I said, moving forward, after the permanent joint headquarters is established, then really how those cooperation and communication line works. I think that will be the next challenge to tackle.
And just a follow-up question to that. Could you see any situation in which perhaps either U.S. forces Japan sort of becomes more of an operational equivalent, or some sort of subcommand of the Indo-PACOM that would perhaps be co-located with the new permanent, Japan's new permanent joint headquarters?
This is something for the U.S. side to determine. So it's not up to me to talk about how things should be or what must be. I'd like to avoid any such statement. This is up to the U.S. But I will say that what's most important is Indo-PACOM does know the situation in Japan and has to think about what USFJ should look at. So Indo-PACOM has a lot of subordinate units. It comes down to how you create a task force, including the positioning of the USFJ command. I think that we'll have to have, there will have to be a lot of discussion about that. US and Japan command and control, SDF comes from the GOJ. The US military gets their commands from the US government. That's not the case between the US and the ROK. There's combined headquarters, as is the case also for NATO. There's a single headquarters that is composed of staff from various countries that does all of the command and control. It's not the case for the U.S. Japan alliance. The RPJHQ will have civilian control from the government of Japan, and Indo-PACOM, or whatever our counterpart is, will have civilian control from the U.S. government. That will be the kind of setup.
Thank you. Well, we have a great question from Eleanor Hughes from the Center for Strategic and Budgetary Assessments, who asks, over the past few years, Japan has enhanced bilateral cooperation with Australia including finalizing a reciprocal access agreement with the country, also one with the United Kingdom. And would ask if you could speak a little bit about the growing importance of the Japan-Australia relationship, and if there are any other countries that Japan should perhaps sign reciprocal access agreements with.
Thank you again for a wonderful question. That these efforts, as we continue to create a stable security environment in the Indo-Pacific region, how we are going to achieve that. I think this issue will be discussed in that big context. So there's U.S.-Japan alliance, which we see as a core. But moving forward, I think that how to promote other relations with other coalition partners is going to be the key. And of course, as I mentioned, Indo-Pacific region has a lot of complex geopolitical environment, very different from Europe. But if you look at other countries in the Indo-Pacific region, if you look at Australia, like the question asked, Australia looks at Japan as a very important security partner. And I think nowadays, Japan and Australia recognize each other as almost a semi-alliance partner. Signing of the reciprocal access agreement is really the testament to our two countries' mutual commitment to the security relations. And also, U.S.-Japan Australia relations enjoy a very close trilateral relationships. And Japan very much focused on that amongst the many trilateral relationships that we enjoy. Let me also talk about Europe a little bit. We just mentioned that UK, but there's also France. All these major European powers begin to look at Indo-Pacific region as their own important strategic theater. We have seen already that coming out of UK. France always talked about its Indo-Pacific strategy. We're seeing more of that. And even Germany nowadays begin to articulate the importance of Indo-Pacific region that it has for its national interest. So in the years moving ahead, the way that Japan should go is to really continue to keep U.S.-Japan alliance robust, but at the same time continue to promote security relations with Australia and as well as major NATO powers in Europe, like UK, like France, like Germany, and create the web of the coalition partners, if you will. And the Japan-Australia relationship is really spearheading that.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. So this last one kind of leans towards the future. You could perhaps speak a little bit about the current defense buildup program, and if you have any concerns about sort of budget, the upcoming budget, and whether it will be able to fully resource these ambitions, and if that's not possible, are there certain changes or areas that you think would probably not be implemented?
I do sometimes wonder about what will happen, but let me say, we have to show strong determination in the implementation phase, and that is what will open the way to the future. We have to have a firm awareness of the security environment and the leaders have to show the way in moving towards a defense strategy to cope with that environment. Diplomacy, deterrence. And so I think that we have to follow through. There are a lot of opinions, but we have to keep a firm eye on reality and create policies that are firmly in line with that reality. So 2% of GDP in 5 years, that's 43 trillion yen, would have been unthinkable in the past to have that large of a budget. First, this has to be implemented. And is 43 trillion yen truly accurate? There could be changes in the situation. There could be hurdles. And in our defense build-up program, we will have programming. There might be priorities that have to be sped up. There could be areas for which the pace could be slowed. I think that may occur. The most important thing is to follow through with determination. And also, the situation does change. And so we have to keep a firm eye on the situation and always make policy judgments that are in line with the changing realities and to invest in proper priorities. And I think that it's fine for them to change and that those priorities, in fact, should change as time goes on. Therefore, we have to create a defense posture that is a response to the changing environment.
Well, I've certainly very much enjoyed the conversation, the discussion today, and the chance to learn more about all the exciting work Japan is doing on national defense and the alliance as well. Let me just ask you, give you the final word, if there's anything, any final thought you'd like to offer.
Yeah,
I have so many things that I left unsaid, but let me keep it simple. Since I retired, I'm very much grateful for this opportunity to be able to come here and speak to all of you today. Since the retirement, it's been about 6 months since I retired. Well, more like 8 months now. I'm still thinking what my next challenge should be. But for the last 40 years, and then especially the last 40 years of my 40-year service, I really lived through the drastic change of the geostrategic environment. And I talked about we need to follow through and finish what we start. So from that perspective, I feel that it is my mission to continue to discuss this issue and continue to talk about the reality and the challenges. So thank you again for this wonderful, wonderful opportunity. And of course, if I may, Stimson is a worldly known think tank. So I'm sure there are many, many programs that the Stimson Center runs successfully. And I have no doubt that each one of those programs contribute to the peace and stability of the international community, including U.S. Japan relations. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the opportunity. And thank you all for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you very much. Thank you.